Anyway, I'll just start by welcoming everybody. I know we have several people signed up, so we won't really get started with the bulk of our presentation to you, but I am going to let you know what we're going to be doing, and so you can be thinking about a couple things. First of all, we're welcoming you to the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation's Community Grants Workshop. Many of you, I feel like I've seen before, have attended before, but a lot of new people, which is really exciting. And we're excited. This is the first time we get to do this via Zoom, which actually I think this could be a very good way to provide these workshops, because we get to record it, put it on the website. If people can't join, they're going to learn from us and from you, from the questions that you ask. So I'm Karen Demarest. I'm Vice President for Community Impact at Community Foundation, Sonoma County, and we have a great partnership, long-term partnership with the Vintners to help contribute to their effectiveness, because they are very good at what they do in terms of raising the money, and then we partner with them to bring our expertise in grant making. And it's just been, I think Dana and Barbara and my team, we can all say without doubt that it is a partnership made in heaven. It really works well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but just to plant the seed with you, what we're going to do is we're going to use the chat function, because there's going to, hopefully be lots of you here. And the chat function, we're going to start by first getting a read on how are you doing today? What is one word that describes your state of being today? So if you can just put that in the chat, we'll see all of that scroll through. Oh, Dana, I love that word. I literally have goosebumps right now. I wish you could see them. Yes, pensive is understandable. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. You just keep filling it out, putting your word in there. My word is, I am also feeling really grateful this morning. I'm grateful to have such an incredible team of people. Annette and Ariana and I were meeting ahead of time, and just, isn't it great when you get to work with great people? It's the best. Okay, so I'm going to ask our team to go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and start. And then I have one more question for you. So Ariana.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Ariana Diaz de Leon, and I'm the Senior Community Impact Officer with Community Foundation.
And Annette.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Annette Williams, and I am the Community Impact Coordinator.
Thanks, Annette and Ariana. And John would be with us, but I just saw a text that he doesn't have the link. So Annette, could you send him the link? All right. And I think it would be nice to go ahead and have Dana and Barbara, and I don't know if there's anyone else from your team here, but could you guys introduce yourselves too, since you're part of the partnership?
Sure. Dana, I'll start and then I'll hand it over to you. I'm Barbara Cox, Director of Marketing and Communications for Sonoma County Vintners. I've been with the organization for, it's going on 6 years. And as Karen mentioned, we're thrilled to have the partnership with the Community Foundation and all the great work that they do, and also with all of you as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Awesome. So I'm Dana McCauley, and I am the Managing Director for Sonoma County Wine Auction. And I've been with Sonoma County Vintners for a little over 8 years, and I've seen this auction in many iterations and the growth of the auction. And I remember the days before we had this incredible team from Community Foundation, where the board members would be bringing in piles and piles of grant applications. And it quickly became clear once we passed the $1 million mark that we needed some help in this arena. And that's where the partnership was born. And it's really been so helpful because Community Foundation Sonoma County, this is what they do full-time for a living. And so their expertise is just really incredible to help us get the funds out to you. And I just wanted to say on behalf of everyone at Sonoma County Vintners and Sonoma County Vintners Foundation, an incredible thank you to all of you for how resilient and resourceful you have been to help our community all of these years, but especially now that we've been so impacted not only by the pandemic, but wildfires and et cetera. So huge thank you for all that you do. We hope that we're able to support all of you. Know that we're here rooting for you all along the way. And if there's any way that we can assist beyond the grants, please don't hesitate to reach out. Karen, back over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you. And I just want to say, these folks, Dana and Barbara and their whole team, they are working so hard all year round for this auction that is all about giving money back to your organizations. And this happens behind the scenes. And the thing is what they're doing is they're bringing attention and resources from outside of our community. So they have a whole network of people who care about Sonoma County and care about the wines and care about what they can get from the auction. And they are cultivating those relationships and continuing to create a love of Sonoma County with these folks so that they will bring their resources into our community, which ultimately serves you. So thank you to the team. They are awesome and they do really so much work for you behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and one question for you. It's always helpful for us to know at the beginning of these workshops, which one of the fields of interest that the community grants are going to focus on, where does your organization fall? So hopefully you have read the funding priorities, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But there are 4 funding priorities. And so in your organization will likely, make the decision whether or not you will be applying for one of those fields of interest. So health and human services, arts and culture, education, or the environment. So if we could just take a moment for you to write into the chat which of those fields of interest you think you would fall into, then we can get a sense of who's here. So you're starting to see what we see every year, which is health and human services is the primary area for applicants. There's always a question between education and a field of interest, and we'll clarify that today. Arts and culture is probably, that receives the arts and culture environment, but what we do is we distribute the funds according to the percentage of applicants. So that helps, even that out. So unless Ariana or Annette, you have anything else, let's go ahead and start sharing the screen. Okay, that's me. And here we go. Can you all see that? Great. So here you are at the 2021. Isn't it 2021? Okay, this is always so confusing.
But they're grants from the 2020 auction. So exactly, Dana. It's the 2020 auction, but the grants are happening in 20. Let's just move on from that. Okay, here we are. Here's the agenda. Welcome and introductions, a little bit about the Vintners Foundation. And I don't know, Dana or Barbara, could I put one of you on the spot to just talk a little bit about the foundation? You're going to do it so much better than I do. Thank you, Dana. I'll come to you. If you say yes, then I'm going to come to you. Then we're going to talk about. Barb, do you want to start off and I'll follow, or?
Oh, you can start.
Yeah, the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation, as Karen mentioned, it's a year-round initiative. It's not just the wine auction. You know, Sonoma County Vintners was founded quite a long time ago to work on behalf of all of the wineries in Sonoma County and provide support. But it became clear, especially I think during my time here, the board's focus and commitment to the community and how important the foundation is to support our community. And as we've grown the auction, you know, it's the more that we're able to give, the more that everyone is relying on support, and that becomes so important to us. And one of the things, and Barbara can talk about this a little bit more, that we realized over the years is that we were doing all of this incredible work, and you're doing all of this incredible work, but we weren't really communicating those stories. So what we've been working on over the last couple of years is really sharing with our donors the incredible work that the results of their philanthropy and support of our community does. So I'd love to pass over to Barb to just touch on that a little bit more, and some of the ways that we've been really working through the foundation to highlight the great work here in our community.
Yeah, and to adding on to what Dana's saying, one of the items that we've done several things, but one of the big programs is really highlighting the organizations in our beneficiary newsletter. So we're committed to sending out a monthly newsletter, and we typically will feature different groups of beneficiaries in that newsletter and feature the work that, that you all are doing, as Dana mentioned. In addition to that, we started this year because videos are just so powerful, and hearing your stories firsthand is great. So Madison Garzoli, who is on our marketing team, I don't know if she's on this call or she's going to do another one of the workshops.
She'll be here, yeah.
Yep. So she heads up to this program, which you started, which is called Community Conversations. And basically, this is a conversation between herself, Michael Haney, sometimes, who is our executive director of both the Vintners and the foundation. And then what we do is pick a beneficiary, usually once a month, to feature a kind of a one-on-one 20-minute conversation that we then send out via a newsletter that goes out to all of our donors, people that are on our list that have attended the auction in the past. So again, really just trying to highlight the great work that you all do.
Thank you so much. So because you're so much behind the scenes, I love to take this opportunity to share, to put a face to a name, and to all your hard work. So thank you to both of you. So today's focus is on the community grants program. So we sent out a newsletter. I suspect you're here because of that. And many of you are former grantees, but so we're just going to talk about what is the community grants program and how is it different than last year. So it is a broadly accessible, responsive grant program. Responsive meaning that every year we look at what are the greatest needs in the 4 fields of interest that we're focusing on, and we target the criteria to be responsive to the moment. So you'll see the criteria this year is slightly different and is reflective of both the needs in the community and the values of the Vintners Foundation. Or the grants will range between $5,000 and $20,000. So you know, your request should match what your need is based on that range. And again, the funding priorities fall in these 4 fields of interest. So before I start talking about the fields of interest, I'm just going to go back to this slide. We're going to talk first about the community grants overview. So I'll talk about the funding priorities, the criteria that we use for evaluation, and then we'll have a Q&A on that section. So kind of that content of the grants program. And then Ariana will come in and she'll talk about the application process and walk you through the different, you know, technical aspects of applying. And then we'll do another Q&A. Our hope is that we'll, you know, we'll finish with some moments to spare, because the one thing that we don't get in this format is the time at the end when people come up and talk to us and ask us the questions that more relate to their specific request. So we'd like to spend a little time at the end, and we'll stay on for anyone who would like to have a more personalized approach or question and answer session. And so the questions at the Q&A sections here are just more general that could be applicable to everybody on the call. Excuse me. So here we are, our funding priorities. As you saw, Health and Human Services is going to be the largest applicant pool, and we are looking at supporting basic human needs that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. So the funding will target immediate and direct critical safety net services. So that could include access to food, shelter and housing, transportation, medical expenses. This is a pretty broad category, but really you can see a couple of clues here about what we'll be looking for. Basic human needs that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Now, throughout all of our grant making in these areas, we are targeting using an equity lens. So those who are most vulnerable due to the pandemic will be prioritized. So this is for organizations who typically are working with and have relationships with people who have been impacted and who are most vulnerable, and then they are able to provide these basic safety net services directly to those clients. In education, we know, thanks to the Youth Truth data that you may have seen in the paper recently, there are 70% of Sonoma County youth are feeling anxious about the future, and that's a data point that is unique to Sonoma County as compared to the rest of the state of California. So funding will focus on organizations whose primary objective is to support youth mental health, with a clear emphasis on those who, again, are most vulnerable according to this data. LGBTQ+, BIPOC, and low-income youth. So really looking for ways to address this anxious about the future and providing direct support to youth mental health. This is for the K-12 system, students in the K-12 system. With environment, we know we've experienced multiple natural disasters, and so we're looking for opportunities to target disaster mitigation projects that are addressing the impacts of fires, floods, and other disasters. So anything that is both mitigating what has been before or is mitigating future disasters. And then finally, arts and culture. We know that the arts and culture organizations have been particularly impacted by the pandemic. And so funding will focus here on organizations, arts organizations that have been impacted and that provide access to culturally diverse programming and audiences. So again, you can see the real emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion here. This is a priority for the Vintners Foundation, and we are seeing opportunities really to support arts organizations who do have who have opportunities to support the beautiful cultural diversity of our community. This program is one where arts organizations are able to apply for general operating support or for specific programming that has been impacted by the pandemic. So that is a lot of information, and I'm going through it quickly, but this is very, all of this is on our website. It's linked to the Vintners website. You can we will share all of this information with you, and you might still have questions after going over this, so you will have a chance to ask those questions. So our criteria for evaluation, one thing that I always like to say is that, we have a certain amount of funding for this program this year. It's $1 million. Okay, so $1 million will be distributed for the community grants. Thank you to the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation for that. That is an amazing resource into our community. But $1 million with all of the things that we're facing right now is, it's going to matter, and we could give away tens of millions of dollars and still not address the needs. So we are asking all of you to really look at your proposal and make a decision. does it strongly align with the funding priorities that we have laid out? Because what we want to be certain about is that if you're applying, you're spending the time and energy in a way that's competitive. I mean, not everybody's going to get funded, but we don't want a couple things. We don't want you to create a program to get funding. So you want to be sure that you have a program established that fits these funding priorities. And then you want to be sure that when you look at the application, you look at the funding priority, you look at the questions, like, yeah, this is actually a really good fit. Or actually, no, it's not a good fit this year. I'll look for next year because the funding priorities typically shift and I might be a better fit next year. I'm not going to spend my precious time on applying if it doesn't fit. So that's something that we're really asking you to consider. So is it a funding priority? Does it fit? Are the goals that you've established, can they be implemented in a one-year program? This is a one-year grants program. Is your staffing, is that clearly defined who will staff this program? And yeah, is it achievable in a single year? And then the proposal increases access to the diverse sector of our community. So again, you're seeing this equity lens through all of the grant making, which is both a priority for Community Foundation and a priority for the Vintners. So some clear eligibility criteria. You have to be a 501c3. There's always an exception of applying with a fiscal sponsorship, and Ariana will touch very briefly on that in her presentation, but fiscal sponsors and the application process is a little complicated, so we always ask that you reach out to us there. This year, we are saying that schools are ineligible. We are targeting the education piece to nonprofits who are working in partnership with schools. That is just a priority that will be easier and actually puts the resource into the nonprofit community, which is really important. This is not a grants program for scholarships or capital campaigns, fundraising events, conferences, and anything specific political or religious purposes. So that is the list of funding priorities and how we will evaluate applications. So I want to turn it over now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you, to ask if you have any questions about that. And I think it's going to be easier, unfortunately, if we just go ahead and put questions in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, start in the chat and then I can see your name and we can have a conversation. Of course, I might have been so brilliant and so articulate and so concise that you don't have any questions, which, you know, that's okay too. Oh, thank you, Linda. All right. I think, unless I see Hector typing there. You can also raise your hand if you want to just ask a question. Okay, Mary Ellen. Did you raise your hand, Mary Ellen?
I did. Sorry, I was trying to, I'm not a very good typist. This is, I'm with a very new nonprofit. We're called Recovery Transportation Systems, and this is our first time applying for a grant. We do have a fiscal sponsor because we have a 501c3. Just mentioned that there might be something special that I need to know. I mean, I have the application, I've been working on it, and I know that you need, you know, some information about our fiscal sponsor, but is there anything else I should know?
Ariana, do you want to take that?
Sure. So I am going to cover the fiscal sponsorship piece very briefly. But what we do recommend is that if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, reach out to me and we can have a conversation just to make sure that you have all of the documents in place when you apply and you're not missing something. So we can talk about that offline.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks, Ariana.
All right. I think we're going to go ahead and move on. And oh, unless, did I see, Clara, did I see you raise your hand?
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Clara Green, and I'm a director of a Vivo Youth Orchestras, which is an arts music program for students. And the organization just became a nonprofit this year. It has been in service for 7 years and just became its own nonprofit through the kind of transition that has ensued due to the pandemic and such. And so even though I have worked with your organization in my previous roles, this would be the first time we would apply for a grant as this nonprofit. And I'm just curious about the education and arts and culture kind of lenses for your program, because we really belong to both. And in some sense, even with the criteria that you mentioned, it's actually kind of interesting, because when you mentioned the focus on the mental health under education, that's actually like a great contribution of what our program brings to the students during the pandemic. But we are really cultural organization as a focus, because we provide music instruction to students. So what are your thoughts? And I don't know if this goes to Ariana or Karen or anyone.
That is a really great question, and one that I think is important to answer for many people who put environment or education or arts in education. The way we typically suggest you look at this question is, what is the primary focus of your organization or your program? So in this case, while absolutely the efforts that you the work that you provide, the things that you provide to young people will impact their mental health, clearly, that's not the primary reason for your program. So imagine you would be competing with organizations that's primary focus is youth mental health. And so their data, their evaluation, their metrics might be stronger around mental health. But if you're competing with arts and culture organizations and the focus of what you do is providing a unique arts and cultural experience to young people, you would be more competitive in that field of interest. So for anyone looking at the two fields of interest and trying to determine where you would best fall, look at it through that lens. What is the primary reason for our program or our efforts? And that's also a question, and I want to mention that now. We are here for you as program officers and as those who are implementing this grants program to answer your questions. And this is a big grants program, and a quick email is probably the easiest way to ask that question. But we can never tell you if you are, are we competitive in this grants program, or would we have a chance? But we can advise you in the way I just did. So if you do have a question, feel free to reach out to us. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again and hand it over to Ariana.
Thank you, Karen. And we're just going to go back to the next slide here, which shows the components that I'm going to be covering. So Karen spoke about the funding priorities, evaluation, eligibility criteria. Now I'm going to cover the application process, more of the technical pieces. That's going to include how to apply, some of the application components and attachments that are required, and also how to get technical support if along the way you find that you need help. And finally, we're going to cover the timeline, which is very important. That includes the deadline, when you can submit your application, other important dates that you need to know. And once we're done with that piece, we're going to open it up again for general Q&A. So Karen, if you can stop sharing your screen, I'm going to go ahead and share mine, because one of the great things about Zoom is you can follow along with me on a desktop. So I'm just going to guide you through how to apply. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, I think that is a good sign. So the first thing that you need to do to apply is go to our website, which is www.sonomacf.org. Once you're on our website, the very front page has a button that says Grantee Login. You click on that button and you come to our login portal page. So this is where, if you have an existing account already, you just enter your email address, your password, and you will be able to log right into your portal. If you know you have an existing account, but you can't remember your password, just click on the Forgot Your Password link and you will get an email asking you to reset your password. And then finally, if you do not have an existing account in our portal, what you're going to do is create a new account. So just click on this button here. That will bring you to our registration page. So this page asks for very basic information about your organization, including the tax ID. And then it asks for information on the applicant who is registering the organization, your executive director's name, contact information, and then finally you will create your password at the end. And when you do create your password, you're going to receive a confirmation email that is automatic and lets you know that you now have an account. And at that point, you would then be able to log in with your email address and password. And now I'm going to transition over to another screen because I'm going to show you what it looks like once you already are logged in. So when you log in, the very first thing you're going to see is your applicant dashboard. This includes your profile for your organization, your profile as an applicant, and then it also includes active requests and any historical requests that you have with Community Foundation or through the Community Grants Vintners program. Now, to apply for the community grants, what you're going to do is click on the Apply button that's right up here at the top. So you click on that button and it brings you to our open grant opportunities. So this is currently open right now. So if you log into your dashboard, you'll be able to see the 4 different funding priority applications for the Vintners Community Grants Program. If you scroll down, that's how you're able to see all of them. What I want to ask you to pay close attention to is where it says the funding priority. So it has it at the top. It also has it in the description, but we want to make sure that when you apply, you're applying to the correct application. So make sure if you're applying for arts and culture, that you're clicking on the arts and culture application. Now, this summary includes information as to the application timeline, the deadline, the grant period, and just important details that you'll want to pay attention to. It also has my contact information and Annette's contact information, and it allows you to preview the questions. So if you're not quite sure if you want to apply it, you can just click preview, and it brings you to the different application sections. You can click on them to then view and see what's in the proposal question component. So that is an option for you. Once you are ready to apply, what you will do is click on that blue apply button, and that'll bring you right into the application. And in the application, you're going to see, once again, the profile for your organization. And when you scroll down, you'll start seeing the questions. So one thing that I do want to note is that if you have completed previous applications through our portal, you are going to have the option of using this button here that says copy previous answers. If you click on that, it's going to bring up any previous applications that you've submitted, and it's going to tell you how many of those questions from that application match with this one, so you can bring it over if you'd like. And that would be, for example, mission statement if you don't want to retype it, and it generally stays the same, so you can just bring it over. Another component is the collaborate component. We know that some of you are working on the proposal, but you want to share it with your executive director, maybe with a colleague. You can just enter their email address here, decide if you want them to view, have access to edit, have access to submit, and then they will receive a message and will be able to access this as well. So that is the application component. And now what I'm going to do is stop sharing so that then Karen can once again share the PowerPoint and we can go through the rest of the presentation. Great, thank you, Karen. So in regards to the application components, There are a set of narrative questions for each of the funding priorities. They are slightly different for each application. I know that many of you prefer to look at the Word document of the series of questions first and to complete your responses there before you go into the online portal. So what we've done is if you go to our webpage, the Community Grants Overview, you'll find all 4 of the funding priority applications as Word documents there already. So you can download them off of our website, use those if you like. One thing I do ask is that you take note of the character count that is listed in the Word document as well. We want to make sure that you don't go over, and then when you copy it into the portal, it won't fit. So make sure you track that character count. And for us, it really is better if you have a concise and clear response to each of the questions. So make sure you stay within the character count. We do require an organization budget for each of the 4 funding priorities, and you will have the opportunity to upload that either as a Word document or a PDF right into the application. A project budget is also required, with one exception. If you're applying for the arts and culture funding priority and you're applying for organizational support for general operating support, then you do not need to submit a project budget, only the organizational one. But for all the other funding priorities, both budgets are required. And we don't provide an organizational budget template, so that we ask you to provide what you already have. But we do have a project budget template that if you want to use it, it's available on our website under the templates tab. Now, a board of directors list is required, and you're able to upload that also as a Word or PDF document right into the application. If you have a fiscal sponsor, the fiscal sponsor will need to provide their board of directors list, and then the sponsee will need to do so as well. And there is a new component called additional attachments that we included in this application, just in case. It's entirely optional, but if you feel like there's something you need to include in this application, you can do so here. It is absolutely not required. The one funding priority that we do encourage you to use it for is for education. So if you're a nonprofit applying for a program that's in partnership with the school, then you can upload a letter of collaboration into the additional attachments. Next slide. So the fiscal sponsorship. We know that this only applies to a few of you, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is important to touch on. So the fiscal sponsorship is required for any organization that is not a 501c3. A 501c3 is a tax designation that means that you're charitable, tax exempt, and a nonprofit. And if you don't have this designation, you can still apply, but it's going to be through a fiscal sponsor. And that means that you actually have a relationship with that organization. And there is a form that we ask you to fill out. That form can be found on our website under our grant application templates. You can download that form. It explains on there what a fiscal sponsorship is. You would take it to your fiscal sponsor. It needs to be signed by both the fiscal sponsor and by the organization being sponsored. And then you would upload this document into the application. There also is a section within the application where the organization being sponsored would include information that we want to know, and would also upload their board of directors list and their organizational budget. Next slide. So we do have diversity, equity, and inclusion questions. Let's go back.
Oh yeah, sorry.
There we go. We have diversity, equity, and inclusion questions. And some of you who applied last year will remember that we included them last year as well. This year, we have streamlined it quite a bit. Once again, these responses will not impact how the application is scored at all, but they do help inform us, and they help inform the Vintners Foundation as well. So the question that we have on there this year is, what has your organization done, or how has your organization responded to the systemic racial injustices that have come up in the last year? So it's completely optional. You don't need to answer this question if you don't want to, but it would be helpful for us to know what your organization is doing. And the Vintners is actually launching a DEI committee sometime soon. So it would be helpful for them also to know locally what is happening with our nonprofits. How are they responding to racial injustice? What are they doing in terms of DEI? So this is there for you as an option if you want to answer these questions. All right, so for technical support and tips, we do have a grant application portal guide, which is a very general guide, excuse me, that you can find on our website if you feel that you want to review it. We also have a frequently asked questions document for community grants that you can access. And these are questions that we have held on to over the years after grant workshops or when people reach out to us to ask general questions, and we answer them on this document. So I recommend that you take a look at it. Maybe there was a question that wasn't asked during this grant workshop that would be helpful to you. So that document is available on our website on the community grants overview page. Another thing I want to know is there is a save feature on the applications. It automatically saves, but I know that some of you might want to hit that save button just to make sure that your work is saved. So that button is there for you. Internet browsers, we recommend you use Chrome, Firefox, Safari. Internet Explorer will work just fine, but it is not as compatible as these other browsers. And finally, if you have any other technical support questions along the way, you can always reach out to Annette Williams, our Community Impacts Coordinator, and she will be happy to help you. And now for our timeline. So the application is currently open. It opened on Friday. So if you go in today, you would be able to submit the application. And we do have 2 different deadlines. So this is very important to note. The first one is Friday, March 5th at 5 p.m. And this is for Health and Human Services and Arts and Culture only. Environment and Education, their deadline is Friday, March 12th, also at 5 p.m. And we stagger it for a couple of reasons. One is we don't want the system to be bogged down. So this helps. But also we tend to get a lot of questions in those last few days before the deadline. And with 4 different funding priorities, we want to make sure that we're able to get to your questions. So if we stagger them out, then we can be sure to focus on the Health and Human Services and Arts and Culture as that deadline nears, and then on Environment and Education. But with that said, I do want to encourage you to start your application early, or at least review the questions. So that way, if you have any clarifying questions that you want to reach out to us for, you can do so early on and we can have that conversation. And you're not waiting for the last minute to get a response from us before you can complete your application. We anticipate that applicants will be awarded of the funding decisions in May. And then I also want to note that the grant period is from June of this year through May of next year. So it is a 1-year grant period. And we ask you to keep that in mind when you're applying for a specific program so that it fits within that time period. And so now we're going to open up for questions, for general questions. But I do want to let you know that if you have a question after this workshop or anytime in the next few days or so about criteria or eligibility, you can reach out to me. Also about fiscal sponsorships. And if you have any technical questions about the application itself or about creating an account, you can reach out to Annette. All right.
So you see some questions here, and Ariana, do you want to take these?
In terms of Karen Gardner's question, thank you, Karen. What kind of documents are most helpful to you as optional attachments, media coverage, additional narrative, letters of support? So we added this based on feedback last year. There's a component at the end of the application where we ask applicants for feedback. And one of the things that we heard was sometimes there was a document they wanted to upload and there wasn't room to do so. So that is why we added this. But we don't want you to add additional information because you see that question there. It really only is if you feel that there is something we absolutely need to know and you want to upload it. So I would say don't add media coverage or more narratives. just add something if you feel like it absolutely needs to be a part of the application. And for education, for the education funding priority, that's where letters of support, if you're partnering with a school, would be helpful.
I think that one of the best ways to answer this question for yourselves would be to put yourself in our seats and imagine all the applications we're going to be reading, and imagine like what is going to help them make a decision. And we often read the media coverage. I mean, we're often going to see who's in the media, but if there is a document, I would say like an evaluation document that shows the metrics and the outcomes of your program, that would be something that you maybe couldn't touch on in your proposal, but would help us really understand the impact of your program. So, Amy is asking about reporting results to us. So go ahead, Ariana.
So we do ask for a report at the end of the grant period that asks, you know, were the goals achieved? And that we're now transitioning to do it through GLM. So some of you who applied in the past might have received it as an email Word document. Now it's going to be a part of the system. And we're always working to streamline it so that we are able to get success stories and really understand what the impact of the grant was without overburdening you or having you write out a lengthy report. So that is something that we absolutely keep in mind.
And then I'd like to add to that, as Barbara mentioned, you know, the Vintners are really trying to highlight your successes to their donors via the monthly newsletter and the community conversations. So if you have something, an event that would be, you know, wonderful for a video or you know, to photograph, or you have a specific success story that you think would really resonate and be valuable to share, feel free to, you know, give us a paragraph or, you know, something really quick, and then we'll connect you with the team at the Vintners so they can reach out. The other thing that they're always looking for that's really helpful during the year as well as at the auction time are excellent photographs. So, you know, you imagine that you're at the auction, those photos, those images of the impact of the donor's investment really matter. Barbara, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that definitely is so helpful. The one thing that we do ask for photos is that we have the rights to use them. So just making sure, and if they're children being used, that we do have permission to feature those in some of our marketing materials. But anything that you have is great. We're, like Karen said, we're constantly looking for those great stories to tell.
Yeah, so from a reporting perspective, what we try to do, and throughout all of this, and I hope we're successful, and if we aren't, or if you have feedback, we really encourage you to put that at the end of the application, because we do read it and we do make adjustments each year based on your feedback. We are definitely trying to streamline this process for you in terms of the application process, as well as the reporting process. So what we're wanting to get from you is not some big long evaluation, because we're aware this is $20,000 up to $20,000 grant. So we want your reporting and your contribution of your time to match the funding that you're receiving. So, you know, like what we want to be doing is working in partnership with you to elevate what you're doing that's working well. And if something isn't working well, then let us know. That's another thing to note is, and you know, the world is changing so much every year. It's been challenging. And so, you know, we recognize that writing a grant proposal is actually trying to look into a crystal ball and predict the future. And so sometimes your prediction when you're writing the proposal doesn't actually match with what turns out to be your project. That's okay. You just have to communicate that with us, and we will, if it's a complicated change, if there's a big change, you'll write a grant modification report. We can track that. And if it's a small change, we just say thank you, we save your email, and all is good. But we see ourselves in partnership with you, not kind of you know, overseeing what you're doing. So just keep that in mind, that we're here to support those changes. And we recognize that's true. Dana.
So I'm going to have to jump off in a minute. So I wanted to be sure to say farewell. But before that, I just wanted to also say nothing breaks our heart more than not being able to give a grant because of the way that the application is filled out and it doesn't address the specific questions. So I would just say and reiterate one more time, really read those questions carefully and the criteria carefully, and be sure to answer each question thinking in terms of that along the way. And I'd also recommend, and sorry if I missed it if you guys covered it earlier, but sometimes it helps to have somebody else from your organization read through your grant application, or somebody else not from your organization that doesn't even understand it, to make sure that, because you know it so well, to make sure it comes across and really communicates the information that's needed and answers the questions, because we really want to support you and we know that you're all doing amazing work. And again, we'll stretch this money as far as we possibly can to support as many organizations as possible. So we're really in it with Karen and Ariana and Annette and the entire team to make sure that you're able to complete this and that this grants application process is really open and transparent and helpful to you. So with that, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Community Foundation Sonoma County team for all of the work that they do. I mean, you guys just do such an incredible job, and I think it's really made this process so much easier for all of our partners and all of us to work together. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for letting me say a few words. And we'll have some other members from the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation team on tomorrow. So have a great day, everybody.
Great, thank you, Dana, and congratulations, Linda. I'm so glad your staff is getting vaccinated. And so with that, unless you have a question, you're welcome to depart and get 10 minutes back, or stay and raise your hand and we will answer your individual questions. So thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and always reach out if you have further questions. And if you'd like to stay